Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined every morning by shaded Jerry Hamilton and Bobby Burton. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking, get those questions in. It appears the chat is already very, very lively this morning. Love to see that. Here in a little bit, we'll be joined by former Texas Longhorn offensive lineman Tony Heels. Always good when he comes on, always has great insight. So be sure to hang around for that here in about 15 minutes. But guys, let's jump right into it. We're just a few days away from Louisiana Monroe. And I was looking this morning, not much has really changed as far as the line goes. We saw a little movement yesterday, and it stayed right there. Texas still a 44.5 point favorite, 99% chance to win according to ESPN Analytics. But kind of holding pat when it comes to the line.
Yeah, here's the reality. A lot of it hinges on Quinn Ewers' availability and other players' availability for this game. I would not take the over. Or I would not take it if I were sitting there with Arch Manning in his very first start. I mean, that's a lot of points, right? Not to say that Arch isn't there. It's just that's a lot of points that you have to do, and then your defense has to be darn near perfect. So that's a big one. Hey, quick injury update on Quinn Ewers from yesterday. According to our CJ Vogel, Quinn threw in some practice yesterday, but it was more warm-up throws, 10, 15, 20 yarders. It was not anything where he let it rip or let it fly. So that is a straight Quinn Ewers update that we're hearing. So look, Sark said on Monday that Quinn would be listed as questionable if this were the game. We believe firmly that Arch Manning's probably about 95 to 99% going to be the starter against Louisiana Monroe. Therefore, that line that you just talked about, Blake, I don't see it moving up at this point, possibly moving down, if anything.
Yeah, for me, it's can ULM move the football and score it all? I mean,
Yes.
Look, they had 286 yards against UAB, and I think they had about 320 against Jackson State, and that's not Deion Sanders' Jackson State with Shedeur and Travis Hunter running around. So offensively, they got some, I think they've attempted 31 passes in 2 games, rushed it like 85, 86 times. So they are run heavy, which does lead me to kind of the 44.5 is a big number because ULM clearly, unless they change identity with the off week, which they do have an off week before this game, they're going to try to shorten the possessions and get their check and get out of town. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I'm not saying the players won't be fired up for the game. Of course they will, but behind the scenes, that's your reality with this game. But again, I'm excited to see more of Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook, Silas Bolden, all those guys. Continued experience for Jarrett Gibson and all those guys. See if some of those young offensive linemen get more reps in the game this week, potentially. I think that's something to look for as well. So, but the defense, I think this will be the defense's game Saturday because ULM has struggled offensively this season. Now, they scored 32 against UAB, but they got 3 turnovers in that game. They won the turnover battle 3-0. So score is probably a little misleading. But again, they won that game 32-6 and didn't have 300 yards.
I get it. I'm just saying, be careful. Be careful going on the over with a brand new quarterback where they're going to try to light Arch up. They are. You're going to have to run into it. They may, look, I wrote this morning, Jerry, on Texas Football. What's the likelihood that Sark sits Jaden Blue again? Would you play him here?
Depends on how Wisner is.
Yeah, but that's my point.
Yeah.
You start ticking off these guys, and all of a sudden you're losing some elite players of your offense. We'll see it.
All right, guys. One thing I did want to bring up, and we've talked about this off and on, but this is the updated chances to make the playoff according to ESPN's FPI following week 3. Texas still on top, 90.4% chance, followed by Alabama at 84.5. Then it drops down to the 70s. Ohio State at 78.9, Tennessee at 72.4, Ole Miss at 70, and then Georgia at 69.3. That's your top 6 there.
So they're clearly picking Alabama to beat Georgia in Tuscaloosa in 2 weeks. That's the number one takeaway there. And clearly not thinking Oklahoma is going to beat Tennessee this weekend.
Or they're thinking that even if they lose to Georgia, they're going to win out everywhere else. Because they have an easier schedule, presumably, than Georgia does, Jerry. I think that's part of it. The one that I can't believe is that we're looking at a 90% chance of Texas making the playoffs through 3 games of the season. Sign me up, man.
I mean, and I think that's schedule. I mean, I think that's schedule related. Look, I mean, we got to be. We're real here. Like, what helps with that is the win at Michigan, obviously, and Texas looks tremendous. But if they had Oklahoma's schedule, they wouldn't be at 90%. And where's Oklahoma on that list?
They are
15.2. I see that. Okay.
A&M at 10.9, LSU 5.3. Any other one?
Oklahoma sandwiched between Utah and Northern Illinois, is that?
You know what I love? Look at number 14, or was it? I don't know what number that is. Washington State gets left in the Pac-12. Now they get to be called a conference champion potentially.
Apple Cup champs. Yep.
And they had a big win over Washington. They may be your at-large bid. Right now, they're the favorite to be the at-large bid. It looks like, right?
Yeah, a couple other things.
Ahead of Boise. Just ahead of Boise.
A&M back over 10%, so congrats there. Bowling Green coming to town, who was at 1.5. But everything does not run through Lubbock because they have a 0.7% chance to make the playoff.
Same as Baylor.
Yeah, and everybody asks about Micah Hudson every day. He's right where he wanted to be. So, you know, there's a look at Iowa at 1.2, Arkansas 1.2. Okay, South Carolina 1.3. Quarterback doesn't get hurt. They're probably at 3.7 last week. So good look at it, and glad to see Dabo still kicking around up there in the 20s. By the way, your 2 sleepers right now, sleepers, UCF in the Big 12. Because they, you know, it's interesting. The quarterback change at Arkansas was good for Arkansas and Petrino. KJ Jefferson leaving Arkansas and going to UCF was tremendous for Gus Malzahn. You're talking about 2 guys that found good fits. KJ Jefferson and Petrino would not have been as good a fit nearly as KJ Jefferson and Gus Malzahn from an offensive standpoint and what they want to do. So that's interesting. By the way, there's a little separation start to happen in college football Saturday. USC at Michigan. Obviously, if they win that game, separation for USC. Michigan, see what happens the rest of their season. It's a big game for both those teams, obviously. And then you have Tennessee at Oklahoma. If Tennessee goes in and beats up on Oklahoma a little bit, then watch their odds go up a little bit more. So that their percentages go up a little bit more. So a couple of separation games there this weekend as well. By the way, Indiana at 24%. They got an interesting schedule.
And
with a good offensive quarterback and coach.
Yeah. I was going to say the thing with Michigan now, as you look at it in the rearview mirror, this will show whether or not the Texas win over Michigan was, of note, right? Because if USC goes in there and, mud holes Michigan, we'll see what that exactly means. My thought on it right now is it's not a good start for Sharon Moore. He failed the first test with losing to Texas in a dominant fashion, right, on national TV. He's failing the second test right now. He chose the wrong quarterback for his team. That's not a good start if that's your head coach. It's just not a good start. And so I feel like we got to be aware of that. And if he loses another one, that's not going to be good for his fan base coming off an undefeated season and national championship a year ago.
Not to mention his D-line coach in the spring issue with
yeah, absolutely. So
and pending NCAA.
Yeah.
I can't believe they gave him the contract after the game. I'm a little shocked.
Blake, last week I posted a question about who the most surprising player was for the Longhorns thus far this season. We had more than 3,000 people vote in this. Jerry, before we even pull up who the possibilities were, it was a resounding victory for one young man that I think deserves every bit of it, acclaim that he's getting right now, and that's Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm has just done a tremendous job so far this year. I think we had some other guys that were surprises thus far, like Jalen Gilbo potentially as well. Blake, if you'll bring that up, that'd be awesome, man.
I sure will. There you go.
Yep, there it is. 3.9 thousand votes. Gunnar Helm won by 67% of who was the Longhorn who surprised you the most this year. David Bendig, Jalen Gilbo, Trey Wisner, Vernon Broughton, also possibilities. But Helm, guys, is Texas's leading receiver right now, in my opinion. Even though he's a tight end, he's the one that I think that Quinn Ewers certainly has had a rapport with as much as anybody. Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond clearly working that way, that direction too. But has there been a bigger surprise on this team for you, Jerry, than Gunnar Helm?
No, I don't think so. Gilbo would have been, but it was talked about in the spring, so it was more expected. But the other thing that tells you is if Gunnar Helm had 3 hurdles in 3 games, he'd have been at 90%.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it just shows this is why you end up being a team as opposed to a collection of individuals. You know, guys that step up and become better than expected. That's what Sark does a little bit with development, man. Happy for those players, that get it done. Really am.
All right, guys. I want to read this super chat real quick from Sugar Daddy, formerly Texas Beats. Thank you for the super chat. He says, "Great day to be a Longhorn, isn't it, fellas?"
Why'd you change your handle?
Yes. Every day is great to be a Longhorn, man. Every damn day.
Well, Bobby, it's also a great time for you to tell everybody out there about Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm.
Well, professional segue there for Blake Monroe. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including motorcycle and ATV, give Adam and his group a call over at loweylawfirm.com. Just reach out to them. They give you a free consultation, no strings attached, to see if you might be due some compensation. Again, that's loweylawfirm.com. Adam's been a sponsor now of Coffee and Football for more than a year, as well as on Texas football in general, and we just appreciate him very, very much. Again, loweylawfirm.com. Thanks a bunch, Adam.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate that. And then, oh, gosh. He followed up your question there, Jerry. He said, "I just wanted to hear y'all call me Sugar Daddy."
It worked. Now buy me a Maserati.
I want that 10 grand, the 10 grand monthly stipend, please, or whatever it is these days, apparently.
And then one other super chat, and I'm going to use this as a segue because we are about to talk about recruiting. But UT Boy, thank you for the super chat. He says, "Jerry Hamilton, with the emergence of Jonte, what happens to recruiting?"
I like the way he slipped in the Jonte super chat. Well done, UT Boy. Yeah, look, I mean, the more DFW guys scoring touchdowns and making big plays, the better it is for Texas recruiting in DFW. I'll say that. And they are.
I was about to say, what's the latest there when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, so I've been talking about. Well, one, I was at Shadow Creek yesterday. I'll get to that in a second. But been talking about Walter Mathis. I went down there to check in on him a couple of weeks ago, just when I was on my way down to Jacksonville to see Jamie French, and because I'd heard that Texas was in contact with him. Then he committed to LSU. Since that period of time, Texas continued talking with Walter Mathis in his circle, and he is expected now. I've been saying it's possible. It is expected to be a visit for the Mississippi State game. So. I don't care where he's ranked, one of the top defensive tackles in the country. I think I've seen more of him than the people who are ranking the players, honestly, because I went to see him. So he is a big-time talent, 470-pound bench press, 650-pound squat, 640, 650-pound squat, and that's as a senior in high school, by the way. 288 pounds, looks like he weighs 270. So that's look, you only have a chance if you get the kids on campus. We talk about it all the time. And Texas is late in this game, and we'll see how much ground they can make up. But I do think if he shows up on this visit, which is now scheduled in Austin, I think him and his family are probably going to get blown away. It'll be the first SEC game for Texas. I can only imagine if Texas handles their business. They're ranked number 1 going into that game. Everything going on around the University of Texas, it's going to be quite the show that weekend. And Chase Sims will be on the official visit that weekend. He is defensive lineman from Richmond Randall, committed to A&M. He's scheduled to go to A&M this week, and A&M's putting up the fight. I still think Texas has a pretty good shot at that one. Then I was at Shadow Creek. We'll cut this short, and then we'll come back and take your recruiting questions. But went to see Chris Stewart, the 2026 4-star receiver committed to Texas. Went to see him at Shadow Creek yesterday. He looks really good. I mean, his acceleration, his ability to run at top end through the ball and locate the football. He's a really solid wide receiver commitment for Texas. They also have the 4-star corner commit to A&M, Kobe Sellers over there. I put out on ontexasfootball.com yesterday. Texas is still in communication there. He doesn't have a game visit scheduled to Texas, so we'll see what happens. But Texas remains in communication with Kobe Sellers. He did tell me that yesterday. So we'll get to more recruiting questions coming up because I know we have it's Hump Day with Hills coming up.
Yep, absolutely. We'll have Tony on in a little bit. He's got his camera. He's got to turn on and get going here, but he's already joined us from the telephonically, I guess. Here he is. Tony, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's happening? What's going on, guys?
Hey, Hump Day with Hills. We're back, man.
Hey, you know I love it.
Longhorn football?
Hey, absolutely. Always talking Longhorn football. Listen, I was talking Longhorn football to my 1-year-old in his sleep. Woke him up.
You tell him bedtime stories about Longhorn
once
football?
upon a time, there was a guy that went to Texas, and his whole life changed. And that's how you got here.
Hey, Tony, we talk to you each and every Wednesday now. We appreciate you so much for coming on. I want to start in this segment with you because we have coaches on here. We've got Brian Robeson comes on. He talks a little bit about the defense. Rod Babers, he's all about the secondary and offensive formations. We don't talk enough about the big uglies. Not that you're ugly, but you get the point, right? We don't talk enough about this offensive line. What do you think of the offensive line's output thus far this season? Strengths, weaknesses, etc.
Absolutely. I always like to start with what they say what the perceived bad news is first, right? And so if we look at the weaknesses, I would say every offensive lineman, especially Coach Flood, when you look at his background, being an NFL coach, right? He spent some time in the NFL. He's coached some people there. It's always about looking for that next level of perfection, right? And so sometimes when you look at Texas, there's some lulls in protection. Some things get a little leaky. We saw with UTSA, right? Gave up a sack there. There was a couple pressures that didn't need to happen. And a lot of that just has to deal with the competition that you're playing. Sometimes when you're playing teams that you try not to bite the cheese, right? But you know what you know. Like, players are not dumb. And so those games are sometimes the hardest to lock in mentally, right? Because you don't have all the hoopla, the hype, the people on the other side that hey, I'm gonna make a name for myself on, right? So I would say the weakness is just not falling into the trap 100% of the time, making sure that we're locked in, we're focused, we're on our assignments. But at least from that game, that's what I've seen. Now, when we talk about the strengths, guys, we've talked about this a million times, the depth of Texas. Texas is one of the deepest teams, if not the deepest team in the entire college football landscape. That UTSA game gave us insight to what Texas has on the third depth side of their roster. Like, I saw guys, I saw Cujo in, I saw Brandon Baker in, I saw Hudson in. There was a lot of guys that got some real burn and some real action in front of a real crowd. And before I keep going, shout out to the Longhorn Nation, man. 100 and something thousand people staying all the way to the fourth quarter to see that butt whooping that we gave UTSA. Man, that's amazing, right? Nobody's trying to rush out of there to get to 6th Street. They want to see it at the end and enjoy the festivities that's there. And players need that, right? So when we look at the strips, it's the depth. Now, if we're talking about the the first group, it's hard to find something that you don't like. It's really hard to find something that you don't like. For me, I talked about it. I've watched Texas for a long time. In the middle of that field is where we struggled with the most. What Coach Flood has brought there is he's brought a toughness. I watched these games. When I went to the game this week, I was on the sideline. First and foremost, these guys are humongous. I'm sitting up there talking to my camera dude like, was I that big? I don't know if I was that big. I knew I was a decent size, but I don't know if I was that 6'7", 6'6", 320, 350, 340. I'm like, Jesus, these are grown men out here, but they move so well and they play in a tandem. They play in unison. And so he's brought a tenacity. He's brought a care and a love for one another. You can tell that they care about the game. I saw Kevin Banks go down on one of the plays, and then I saw him right back in the next series. That's not a game that he needs to finish. We know we need to start getting ready for the next one, but that's not the mentality that they have. And so there's a mentality that the coach has put into these guys. I actually talked to one of the players after the game, and I was asking him, man, give me some insight on why you came here. What is the thing that Coach Flood brought to you? And you know what he said? He's the same person no matter if you're the starter or if you're the guy that's trying to work your way up. And I can tell you guys as an athlete that that's the thing that you respect. When you know exactly where you sit and it's consistent with the coach, that breeds consistency within the room. And now we're seeing all of the intangibles come into play tangibly on the football field. So I hope that answered the question, but I could keep going over and over. I had this disease called diarrhea of the mouth. So if nobody's stopping me, I'm going to keep going.
Hey, Tony, I got a question because the chat always asks, how many NFL players are on the starting Texas offensive line? So I'm going to throw that one to you. You played it for a long time. And I know I'm putting you on the spot without really studying each guy.
No. I have. So obviously we know the two that are probably going to be top tier picks, that being Majors and Kelvin. I still have to see a little bit. I know about Cam. I still have to see a little bit more from Cam, but actually, I don't know about Cam. I have to watch him. I'm not saying he can't be, but I have to watch him more. This is his first year starting. But the from right guard all the way down, those guys can play in the league. Now, where they go, that's depending on the fits, right? You want to be in the right fit. For instance, I went in the 4th round. Perfect fit, walked right into a Super Bowl, right? So it's about fit, but all of those guys, this is what we have to understand. When you're looking at the NFL, when the NFL is evaluating offensive linemen, they're looking for explosiveness, they're looking for stick and stay, they're looking for smart, tough players, they're looking for players that can identify defenses that might be what others might seem mentally taxing. How do you perform in those particular situations? They're looking to see how you deal in competition. Guys, these guys have been answering the bell on that question for 3-4 years, right? And so now being in the SEC, now what's happening is now these guys are what I call, they're in the making money season, because now you're playing these competitions. You're going to be playing the Georgias, right? You're going to be playing the Kentuckys, which now is a talk of the town with how they play Georgia, right? So you're playing these higher competitive teams. So the scouts really get to see that stuff. There's 7 rounds in that thing. It's not about where you go. It's just about going. And I feel like all 4 of those guys, with the exception of me having to really study Cam Williams, really have a true legitimate shot to make it there. The intangibles are there, right? They're being coached by one of the best coaches in college football, right? So we know that. We know they're coming from a smart program. The athleticism is there. All of these guys can move horizontally, vertically. I saw double team blocks, guys getting blown up out of the hole. I saw lanes everywhere. Like they work well together, and they just understand the game of the trenches. So there's no reason for them not to be able to make it. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys. There's this thing where they talk about, the best of the best go to the NFL. Guys, I'm gonna be honest. That's not true. Sometimes politicking actually gets you into the league, and we're just keeping it 100, right? I've seen guys to where I know some guys that I play with should be where I'm at right now if this is what if this is what we're saying is NFL caliber player. So I don't see not one player on that line, with the exception of me having to study Cam a little bit more, that couldn't play in the league.
Hey, Tony, you mentioned Jake Majors there, and I saw a All-American team, an early three game in All-American team. They had Quinn Ewers and Kelvin Banks on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? They had Jake Majors, first team All-American at center.
Absolutely.
What is it that you see from him? Because I mean, look, 3 years ago, people were trying to replace him.
Yeah.
Including potentially Kyle Flood, because he likes the bigger centers, apparently. But Jake Majors is out there pulling more than ever before right now.
Yep.
What are you seeing from Jake Majors that makes you think that, hey, he may be deserving of that? And you mentioned him in the same breath almost as Kelvin Banks. I mean, what are you seeing there?
Yeah. So there's a guy that I played with in Dallas. I'm not saying this guy is that, but when it comes to the way that he identifies fronts and how he plays fronts and how he's always in the right position, he's very Travis Frederick-like, right? His mentality, his smarts. Now, Travis is an investor now and had like an engineering background, so I don't know what Jake's is, but I know that this kid is a very smart kid. When I look at Jake, body position wise, I never see him out of position. So what you're seeing with Jake, right? Everybody trying to kick him out. He was just a late bloomer, right? But when the only way that you get good at playing offensive line, this is not like a receiver or a secondary person or linebackers or pass rushers, right? The only way that you get better at becoming a great lineman is through repetition, period, point blank. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the repetition of understanding how to move, like I can coach a guy, right? I can coach a guy on, hey, if the guy wants to do a rip technique, right? He wants to push the edge. You want to put your hands here and push him out. I can coach you all day long, but until those bullets start flying, sometimes some of that stuff goes out the window. And I'm going to tell you, like Sean Kugler told me, hey man, just get the freaking job done. Right. And so with Jake, he's technically sound. He's a tough kid, first and foremost, right? He's durable. So NFL scouts love that. And he just understands how to play that position, right? And so I think that as you continue to see him blossom, the Michigan game for me is all I needed to see with Jake. I needed to know how he handles guys that are bigger than he is. Beautifully. Because he's technically sound. So the reason why I'm going to say this right now, this is week 3. I'm saying this right now. I would not be surprised if Jake is in the Remington talks by the end of the season. Just watch. You just watch. Barring injury, just like week to week, he's healthy and he's out there ready to go. Just watch if this kid is not in the Remington talks, because he is that good. And this is the thing. A lot of people don't really understand how much of an impact he has on the game, right?
Yeah.
The reason why you're not seeing these blitzes get home, yes, Quinn Ewers and Archie Manning are phenomenal quarterbacks, but guys, they're picking up backside blitzes because they're identifying the proper mic identification predicated off of safety reaches. That's Jake. That's a lot. Of course, that's Coach Flood in the coaching, but that's this kid downloading information and doing the thing that he needs to do to set the front, right? So that we can identify our guys and then go play ball. And I'm telling you, this kid is fun to watch for me. I watched the UTSA game again. I watched it when I was there. I also watched it yesterday just to see if I was seeing the same thing. And I am. I'm seeing this kid identify the fronts. I'm seeing him identify the checks, and he's playing the game at a high level right now.
Hey, Tony, I wanted to ask you about Colin Simmons, because you were teammates with the Rathpo and Sergio Kendall, right? You went up against those guys. So you went up against the 2 best at Texas. Now I think Colin's is going to work his way into that conversation as just pass rushers. What do you like about Colin Simmons? Where do you think he could go as a player?
I'm not even going to say the sky's the limit, because we know that there's an atmosphere outside of that, and that's where he could be somewhere in there. Like this kid as a freshman, I'm telling you, man, the stuff that this cat is doing, like Here's my thing. A lot of times when you have guys that are great pass rushers, they're not really good at the run. He's really good at the run. He's physical. He doesn't run away from blocks. He runs through them. He's trying to break your face mask, like we like to say, or stick his face in the fan, right? So that mentality bodes well for him to be able to play the entire down. Like, he popped off the tape for me defensively. When you talk about where he fits in the Sergio Kendall and Arakpo space, the thing with Rack is Rack was very, very strong, extremely strong, like crazy strength, right? Sergio was more elusive, right? He had a little more fluidity to his movement, which is why he got home quite often. I think that Colin Simmons is a mixture between both. When you look at his first step off the line, like one of the plays he had, I mean, he timed up the jump so bad the guy was still in his stance trying to figure out if that's the guy I'm supposed to block. Like, yeah, big fella, that's your guy, right? But he just moves so well. I think with him, it's never going to be physical with Colin. Once he understands what he's doing and when to make that play, when to set this guy up, how to set this guy up. Now we start playing the game within the game. All right. I've given him a couple of speed rushes, kind of lull him to sleep. Now I'm gonna hit him with a stutter to the bull. Now I might hit him with a stutter long arm, fake the long arm and rip. When he starts to understand how to play games with linemen, this guy's gonna be lighting up the sack board. So I really like what he's doing for sure.
I got to ask this because it's interesting. We were talking yesterday about the differences between Brian Arakpo, Sergio Kendall, and even Colin Simmons, because they were natural pass rushers. They just had a little bit of a knack in different ways, to your point. But we were talking about ball get off. Rod Babers and I think it was. And I think he may have better ball get off than Arakpo and Sergio. Now, he's not as violent necessarily as those guys right now.
Yes.
But he may actually be, I'm not saying a half step, but just that split second faster than those guys. Yeah. That's what kind of, you look down the group, and I think it was either Brian Robeson or Rod mentioned Von Miller type stuff with him.
Yeah.
Get off.
Absolutely. No, Bobby. So here's the thing. Quiet is kept. Colin trains out here in Dallas with Michael Parsons. Yeah. Right. And so you got to think about the type of information that you're getting. I agree with you 1,000%. And the reason why people say Von Miller is because when you look at what Von has done, not only collegiately, but what he's done in the NFL, that kind of lean, heavy lunge on the front leg. As soon as the ball is snapped, I'm in 2 steps before you're in 1. He reminds you a lot of him because of that. As a matter of fact, Von is extremely talented as it pertains to being able to manipulate his body. So when he comes off the edge with the long arm, and you're thinking you're gonna get this long arm, and then he pulls it and dips underneath you to hit the corner. I saw Colin do that on his sack, and so I know that he's being trained by some guys. He might have even been trained. If he was at the BT Jordan thing out here in Dallas, then I know he talked to Von, because Von is at that thing all the time. So he definitely does have a quicker get off than both Sergio and Arakpo. But to be honest with you, even with all the sacks that both of those guys had, when you look at just natural ability, Colin has more natural ability than Sergio in Arakpo. He just does. And I don't know if that translates to what those two did from a career standpoint. But what I'm telling you is somebody walking on the field first day, say Hut, it's like, oh, this kid is special. That's him. Look at what he's doing his first year. It was 18, 19-year-old kid, man. You don't see that. You just don't see that in pass rushers. A lot of these guys, it takes them about 2 years before they finally understand the game. B-Rob could tell you, I mean, he switched positions. It took him about a good year before he became the Brian Robinson that we know today. So, and I would love to get his take on that as him playing it in on what he thinks. But that's what I see from the opposite side of the lens.
Tony, last thing I have for you, and we got to ask you. I mean, you were there. I think you said you were there. You watched it back second time. Your thoughts on Arch Manning, first real action he's got at Texas?
The only people are surprised is the people that have never watched him. Jerry. Like this kid, I'm gonna tell you. You want to know what I looked at? Look, can he run? Absolutely. We've seen him in high school. We know he can scoop. Is he going to be an accurate passer? His last name is Manning, right? So we understand that. We've seen that. The confidence that this kid has, being so young, with the and the running with the ball behind him, like you can tell that he's comfortable in that offense. You can tell that he's ready to step into that role and to lead that team. And I'm gonna tell you, we know that his mentality is different. And I know a lot of times we give a lot of praise to his family, right? That great family that he comes from. But I'm going to give a little praise to this kid. In a world where a lot of people sacrifice long-term success on the altar of short-term pleasure, he has decided to say, I want to be coached by the best. I don't care what this NIL thing is doing. I don't care what this looks like. I don't care about wanting to start from some team. I want to start and play for the University of Texas. And whatever it is that I go through is what I got to go through. I'm just going to make sure that I grow through. And now he's grown within that time frame, and he went out there and put on the clinic. And guess what, guys? It's probably going to be worse for Monroe than it was for UTSA, because now he's going into the game knowing I'm the guy. Right. It's a lot different when you got to stay ready. It's one thing. It's one thing when you know you got to stay ready. It's another thing when you know that this is my show. And so I'm excited to see exactly what he's going to do. That added element of being able to take it 67 yards is going to put a lot of teams on notice. And I mean, I just at this particular point, and I heard Sark say it, they have two starting quarterbacks, right? And so I look forward to watching him in this game and seeing where he grows. Is he able to feel that backside pressure, knowing that he's hot there? They're rotating safeties, like just those little nuances. But again, the only way that you get good at learning that stuff, like it's just playing the game. That's how Quinn got good. He played the game. He felt it. He saw the looks. He understood. That's where we're at.
Tony Hills, former Longhorn, a lifetime Longhorn, as well as former NFL player, Super Bowl winner. There you go. We appreciate you so much for joining us, Tony.
Tony, I gotta tell you, that was terrible. You'll never be back on again.
I'll do better next time, G. Maybe you know what? I know what I messed up. I didn't get my Manscaped on before I jumped on the show. They
have the new gold-plated one, by the way. Oh, the new one's coming out.
The only. Listen, all I wear is gold, brother. You know what I mean? So that's a championship manscaping tool that I have to get. I'll use your code to buy it so you can get some credit.
Love it.
Take care, Tony. Thanks, buddy. Have a good week, man.
Right,
we'll talk to you after ULM. Again, Tony Hills, Hump Day with Hills, joining us here on Texas football. Good stuff from Tony. Hey, I saw this thing following up on Arch Manning. I saw this video from Roman Harper yesterday, Jerry and Blake. And one of the things that Roman Harper, the former NFL safety, long-time NFL safety, said that he saw from Arch Manning that was underrated, his ball handling.
Yeah.
Said that he looks like a pro already handling the ball. And so that allows him to do some things maybe that others his age wouldn't be able to do. So that's just another little small thing that adds to the overall.
And to that point, Bobby, I think it's a great point that you made and Roman Harper made, is that was probably, of all the things Peyton Manning was really, really high in that may have actually been number one in accuracy. So if there's one thing that is taught to somebody, it's that. You have to go out and play the game, react, do all that stuff yourself. But if there's one very teachable thing within mechanics, it's ball handling. The other thing Roman Harper said was he was not rushed. That and then he stood in and took the hits.
Yeah, the first throw where he took the hit in the end zone.
Yeah.
Right. And it could have been intercepted, but he took the hit, allowed him, he thought, to stand in and take the hit the next time that he completed one to Ryan Wingo.
Yeah.
That was he said that's a development thing. And I agree with him. All right, Blake, you and Jerry have got your work cut out for you. Jerry, Manscaped first.
Gooder.
Blake, I dare you.
Gooder.
Gooder. Excuse me.
I was gonna say, no, but look, I'll tell you this on ontexasfootball.com, in a recruiting post I made this morning, I have a picture of the new gold-plated Manscaped. Man, that's really good. But I'm here today with the shades on, talking about Gooder, my favorite shades. I will be hitting the cycling bike with these bad boys on a little later today. These stylish sunnies start at only $25 a pair. No slip, no bounce, all polarized and all fun. I can't think of anything better to cover your eyes with. Go headed into DKR in that 95-degree heat and that sun bearing down on you Saturday. There is a 1-year warranty, which don't need it. 30-day money free returns, which they just say because you don't need that either, but they got to say it. But there's 3 new high-performance styles. There's the Bolt G. There's sport shades with a ventilated wrap lens and no slip fit to keep you in the zone. There's the Bug G, which those are really good for cycling, running, the aerodynamic wraparound shades for next level performance. Then there's the Astro G, which Altuve should have been wearing when he took his shoe off and threw it last night because he fouled the ball off the foot and they said it was a ball in play. These shield sunglasses that prove the sky isn't the limit. Nothing is the limit. Epic is a lifestyle. Fully adjustable nose piece, no slip temple grips, anti-fog coating, which that's very important, by the way. Nothing worse than fogged up glasses if you're going 30 miles an hour on a bike or jogging or whatever you're doing. If you want to support the show and try a pair, Gooder is giving On Texas Football all caps listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com/OnTexas all caps. Use that code OnTexas all caps for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, which they only put in there because it's a read. You don't need it. And 100% satisfaction, which could be 1,000, but they didn't want to get cocky. Again, that's gooder.com/OnTexas all caps.
Gary, I forgot I was muted. Thank you, Bobby, for unmuting me. And thank you, Jake, for reading that. I also need to let everybody out there know about BetterHelp because this episode of On Texas Football is brought to you by the folks at BetterHelp. And there's a lot of helpful apps out there, but it would be difficult for any of them to be more useful than BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp is an app that helps those in need to find the help that they deserve. Maybe you're having personal issues that you just can't figure out. Maybe you've experienced major trauma in the past, or maybe you recently lost a loved one. Maybe you get caught up comparing yourself to someone else. Whatever the case may be, if you're considering beginning therapy as an option, you'll want to check out BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp is entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, designed to be flexible, and designed to suit your schedule. So no matter what your own previous experience with therapy is, check out BetterHelp.com today. Stop comparing yourself with others. Start doing something about it. Visit BetterHelp.com/OnTexas to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OnTexas.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
Kelly says you have a future.
Oh, boy.
Jerry has a future with the Secret Service. Those shades, brother.
I will do my best to guard the tailgate Saturday.
I thought. Never mind. All right, we're gonna jump over to some super chats real quick, guys, and we're gonna start here with this one from JJ. Thank you, JJ. He says, "Sometimes I think Blake posts my normal post to make me feel guilty enough to do a super chat. Well played, Blake. Well played." That very well could be. But thank you, JJ, for the super chat. Burt Reynolds Jr., thank you as well. He says, "Get that man Tony a contract, Bobby. Everyone loves some hump day with heels."
He was on the first time, and we all talked about it. I was like, I need to talk to Tony about coming on more because he's terrific. He really is. He's got a gift that allows him to really communicate his thoughts and articulate them. I'm really, really happy for him. And he's got a career going on, he says. So This is not, he's not all time doing stuff. He's got a very successful career that he's engaged in. So he's a little limited on time, but he said he would be definitely helpful for us and, come on every so often with everyone.
I will say that if John Bianco's listening, he should clip that Tony Hill's talking about Jake Majors is just tweet that out for Remington.
I completely agree. That's the whole, Jake Majors that was just such a good segment when he talked about that, because, Jake is a guy that does not, center is typically a thankless position, right? Typically. But you can actually see the progress that we've seen with this offensive line of Jake Majors in many ways, I think. And what I mean by that is, as he's gotten better, the whole offensive line has gotten better. And here he is, his last year at Texas, and they've never been better. This is the best Texas offensive line since, I don't know, 05. I mean, it's just a terrific offensive line.
I had a couple of recruiting super chats. We're going to start with this one from Jackson. Thank you, Jackson. If we could recruit better for a certain position or position group, what would y'all pick?
Blake, I wrote this morning. On June 28th, I would have picked defensive line. On June 28th, Texas had lost Josiah Sharma and Myron Charles in a 3-hour window. Okay. Fast forward to today, I'm no longer worried. It's less than 3 months later. I'm no longer worried about defensive line recruiting. Instead, I'm excited about it. And you realize how big that change is? I mean, not only did Sharma and Charles flip to Texas, but now you're talking about the Walter Mathis from Savannah, Chase Sims out of Richmond Randall. There's all kinds of guys. Kevin Wynn is back in play a little bit. They're still talking to Brandon Brown. They're guys. Mbachu. I forgot about Joseph. I mean, there's just guys that Texas has kind of swayed. The winning, I think, has obviously helped, by the way. Winning football games has helped, and being in the eye of the nation right now at number 1 in the country. But I would have easily said defensive line this time 3 months ago. Now I'm not. Now, Jerry, I think maybe cornerback recruiting would be a position where I'd like to see them do a little bit better at going forward. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think I think cornerback's interesting because I think they're just going to go deep sea fishing here, like Sark likes to say. And if they don't get a flip of somebody, they may just go to the portal. But I think by them doing that, they're actually showing. I agree with you, but I wanted to point out they may be showing confidence in the young kids on campus. I've heard Santana Wilson's look pretty good, even though he's going to redshirt this year. Texas is very pleased with him. So you have Manny Muhammad coming back. Kobe Black, he's making some strides there, right? Obviously, Javion Cole will be back. You'll lose Barron and you'll lose Holmes. You have Caleb. I think Caleb Chester's going to outplay whatever ranking you have there. Warren Roberson, young kid. I think that the fact that they're just going deep sea fishing, as Sark says again, at corner, trying to flip somebody really good in this cycle, tells you they're kind of confident they're young guys, but also tells you they know that, or they think, or they know they can go to the portal and get somebody really good for next year.
Well, most people have talked about Devin Sanchez, that's committed to Ohio State out of North Shore, as well as Dorian Brew out of Conroe, that's committed to Oregon. You mentioned a guy that you went and saw yesterday a little bit, Kobe Sellers, that Terry Joseph is talking to him somewhat regularly, even though he's committed to Texas A&M at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Texas is reaching out to a bunch of those guys. Somebody asked about Dejon Lee, committed to Bama. I think Texas is reaching out to a bunch of guys like that, Dorian Brew. But again, if you can't get these guys on campus for a game this year, then or late in the season for a weekend or something, then it's kind of there's a lot of talking going on, but then there's got to be action, I would say. And we'll see what happens as it plays out.
Something's got to be reciprocated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like for me, you know, what Texas has going for them is, hey, just come up to the Georgia game, man. It's going to be a great college football game. Just come on up for that game. Then at least you can get the kid on campus. and then maybe you can make a move and make it get a little muddy for the team that they're committed to. But I do think that has to happen first. Because, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Devin Sanchez, when's the last time he's been on campus in Austin? It's been a long time. I mean, and Kobe Sellers, been a long time. He didn't make a June official visit. Dorian Brew did. So then you had Dijon Lee did, but I think he's pretty solid at Bama. But Texas is going to chip away. That's what Sark does. They continue to battle for those guys while evaluating the rest of the country. And there haven't been any new offers at corner thus far, 4 weeks into the high school season, which tells you maybe they think they have a shot at one of these guys, or that they're content if they go swing for the fences and don't hit a home run, that they'll just go into the portal and get a really good player.
Okay, guys, a couple of other super chats here. This one. It says, Bobby, can we get a boom for the recruits who moved up in the rankings? Lance Jackson, Jonah Williams, and Barnes.
Elijah Bo Barnes. Yeah, look, I don't pay too much attention to recruiting rankings these days, other than team recruiting rankings. But I will, because Jerry is probably the only individual that's seen all three of those guys in person at a practice, including all the guys that rank the players. So, he went out to Texarkana Pleasant Grove. He went to Galveston Ball. He went to Dallas Skyline. And so a lot of it, the national guys have not seen those guys in person because they can't see everybody.
Right.
They've got, there's 3,000 players nationwide. And so I've always, probably starting about 10 years ago, I've been more into this idea of, is he a take or is he not? What's his ceiling? What's his floor? More nuanced evaluations, I guess, than just saying stars. Now, that being said, I think I'm really happy for Lance Jackson, Jonah Williams, and Elijah Barnes to get the recognition they deserve. Okay. But those rankings don't make them a better football player than they were the day before. It just makes their profile bigger, which is great. That's all fine and well. But Jerry, one of the things we were going to try to talk about today, and the time's kind of gotten away from us, is how impressive the 2024 class is for Texas and what we think the 2025 class looks like thus far. Very similar classes in a couple of ways. And just Texas is loading up on talent right now. And those three guys definitely a part of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I love the jumbo athleticism in this class. And by that, I mean Lance Jackson, obviously. Jonah Williams, jumbo at safety, a guy that's going to be 6'3", 210, 215. That's a jumbo safety. Elijah Barnes, 6'2" and change, 239 when I was there in August. Guy ran 10.9, 600 meters at the district track meet. Nick Townsend, who's still underrated nationally. I just gotta tell people that rank the players. Find another tight end that catches that's 6'3.5", 238, that runs 10.9 in the 100 meters, fully automatic time, that catches the ball in the flat against Port Arthur Memorial and goes 76 yards for a touchdown. The last person to do things like that against Port Arthur Memorial was Jamal Charles in practice. I mean, Nick Townsend is an extremely high-level prospect. He's a top 40 type kid in the country as a prospect because he's that way at linebacker or at outside linebacker coming off the edge. I mean, he is a high-end prospect. So I love those jumbo athletes in this class. I like the two running backs in this class because they're totally different backs. And I think James Simon really fits what Sark wants to do in the run game. And then I think Ricky Stewart is very similar to Trey Wisner. So I like that they have two different kind of backs in this class. They can both catch the ball in the backfield. They both make plays in the passing game. I really like this class. I think the interesting thing for the chat, guys, is this freshman class playing right now at Texas actually Sark's most impressive class from a freshman standpoint? I think that's a really good question for the chat, because you got to think back to 2022, 2023 classes. Is this 24 class the best early on because of Simmons, Wingo, some of those other freshmen that are
Gibson's leading the team in rushing. Anthony Smith looks like a winner. Alex January played 15 snaps on Saturday.
Yeah.
Jordan Washington looks like he's legit. Trey Owens looks like he's legit.
Yeah.
It's impressive. I completely agree. I think that, Jerry, just circling all this together, the thing that I look at that sophomore class, Anthony Hill is in a different category than a lot of players at Texas, similar to Wingo and Simmons, right? Arch Manning also in that class with Hill as well. So I feel like it's just, I went and looked at the classes from 22 to 24 and even started looking at 25. And what I see from Sark is like incremental improvement. They're getting high-end guys like a Hill, like an Arch Manning, like a Colin Simmons or Ryan Wingo, but they're also, 7, 8 NFL players, 8, 9 NFL players, 9, 10 NFL players. That's the kind of lift they're getting. And so all of a sudden you're going, Tom Herman's last class, I think, is going to have 5 or 6 NFL players, right? So what's the difference between 5 or 6 NFL players in a recruiting class and 9 or 10? That's 2 times the amount of talent. That's the answer.
Yeah.
So I'm, and that was Tom Herman's best class, by the way. So I think it's huge. I absolutely think it's huge.
We got some more super chats here, fellas, and another one from Sugar Daddy. What defensive tackles do we have in line after this year to start?
Well, is Savea going to come back? Sadir Mitchell, by the way, played his most snaps ever as a Longhorn on Saturday, had 10 snaps. So hopefully he's starting. I'm not saying the light bulb is going on there, but he's a possibility. Alex January played more snaps and got on the field earlier. Aaron Bryant's been injured. I would not be surprised if Texas goes to the portal for a defensive tackle. I don't think we should be.
Agree.
So they've got to have an influx at that position because they need to be deep.
Yeah.
I do think one of the best things about the defensive tackle room right now is its depth. It may not have the high-end players of a year ago, but it's got more guys as it relates to this right now. Jure Bledsoe saw a lot of snaps on Saturday, but I think Jure may be behind Alex January right now because Alex January's showing that he can stop the run. I mean, Alex January, there was a 4th down play where Anthony Smith, I think, made that stop in the backfield. Alex January got penetration on that play and helped, create that gap. So I feel good about where Texas is overall, but I do think they're going to need 1, if not 2, from the portal just to give them some depth and experience at that position. Going to have to go hard because it's hard to get those players in the portal.
Another super chat from Burt Reynolds Jr. Thank you, Burt. What positions are better filled through the portal, maybe wide receiver or safety, versus high school pipelines, such as offensive line, defensive tackle, linebacker? Y'all's thoughts?
Well, if we're talking Texas wants to go through the high school ranks for OL and develop those guys. If you're talking about, wide receiver, tons of those guys, defensive backs in the portal every year. It's kind of like high school recruiting. A lot of those guys are ranked really high. There's so many of them, right? So I think that kind of follows through into the portal. With Texas specifically, they want to develop offensive line from the high school. They want to recruit the high schools and develop those guys. That's why they haven't. Now maybe they haven't had a need, but they haven't gone to the portal. And I would be surprised if they do. It'd have to be some great player that falls into their lap. Defensive line, ideally, you want to build that up to where you don't have to make a living in the portal on defensive line, because as you saw last year, Dominic Williams, I mean, there's maybe one or two really high level guys. So the idea is to recruit those guys out of high school, develop them, and keep bringing in more of those. Because if you're portal dependent at D tackle for high end guys, those kids have a ton of leverage in an NIL world, a ton, because their people know there may be one or two. Linebacker, I mean, there's been some really good linebackers hit the portal and do well and get drafted. So I think that from a Texas perspective, offensive lines and defensive lines where they want to stay away from, everything else is in play.
I think that Sark has gone to the portal for receivers out of necessity.
Yeah.
To this point. He did not connect on the 2022 class where he only took Brennan Thompson and Savion Red. And that's put him in a little bit of a hole. Whereas I think the 23 and 24 class, he hit on some guys.
Yeah.
And so I'll be interested to see how much they go in the portal at receiver going forward. Although here's the reality of that. There is always room on your team for an Isaiah Bond, right? If you get potentially the fastest wide receiver, that's a true wide receiver, not a flyer like Brennan Thompson, who's truly just a flyer, really good one. Then I think that Isaiah Bond, you have to make room for great players. And that could be at any position, by the way. That could be linebacker, defensive end, offensive tackle, whatever if there's a great player available, you have to make that move if you're a head coach.
You're muted, Blake.
Sorry about that. I was doing something real quick. Okay. This next one ties into what we're talking about, guys. This one from Johnny. Thank you, Johnny. With Bond and Silas leaving, Golden maybe, if I'm not mistaken, does Sark hit the portal, or do you believe that we're okay with the production now at wide receiver?
I know I'm on record. I think all three will be gone. I think Matthew Golden is going to be a mid-round pick, and you know what? That's a lot of money turned out. And he's put in 3 years of college. But yeah, I do. Look, I think Texas will sign 3 high school receivers. They may not go to the portal for 3. They don't have that same need. Assuming all the guys are back, Wingo, Jonte Cook, DeAndre Moore, assuming all those guys are back. You have Lockett and French coming in, both midterm enrollees. I think you'll sign a 3rd in the high school ranks. I could see 1 or 2 in the portal for sure. 1 for sure, maybe 2, Bobby. Just depends on kind of how the rest of the season shakes out.
Yes, and the health of them at that time, maybe.
Yeah.
The position that we need to be talking about right now, probably in the portal, may be running back. Because they took one already with Velton Gardner. He's graduating. Jaden Blue's going to be gone. You don't know where the long-term health is going to be of Cedric Baxter or Christian Clark. Those are not easily recoverable injuries over time.
We know they're out for the spring.
Yeah. And so I could see Texas looking at the portal for a experienced running back. The only wide receiver I see him taking is somebody that they think is special.
Yeah.
If they see an Adonai Mitchell out there, they need to go get him.
Isaiah Bond, those type of guys.
They need to, if they see those kind of guys, it's like I said, that without that speed, I mean, that's what makes Texas Texas right now. There's everybody's, I shouldn't say this. Everybody is not necessarily scared of Texas's speed, but they're certainly aware of it. Isaiah Bond is part of that, right? And you're going to lose Bond and Blue next year. If they find a speed guy, just we'll see. Because I don't know that they have Ryan Wingo and Isaiah Bond are your 2 fastest receivers right now, at least in a 100-yard dash or whatever, 100 meter. Their times were. I feel like Texas has room for an older guy that can really run next year that they might look at in the portal. Like, I don't even know who that might be right now. I haven't, looked around college football and said, hey, that's a guy.
Yeah.
But
that's the speed is so real. One of the key teaching points for opponents coming out that are going to bring up the UTSA Texas game film for future opponents for Texas. They're going to say, see what this DB did on that Bond play where he went 50 yards? No, that does not happen. I guarantee you somebody's not going to play through Matthew Golden again this year. They're going to get to the outside shoulder and turn that play back in. Because I'm telling you, the only player that could have caught Isaiah Bond on that play, the way UTSA played it, the way that corner came up and played it with ego instead of technique, is if Xavier Worthy was playing safety. And that's the level of – so that's what's going to come out of this game. If you take a couple of things from the game that future opponents, they're going to use that tape as the bad and ugly tape and say, no. This is not how we play this, because this is what's going to happen to you two. That's how fast Isaiah Bond is. By the way, Kabir Hussein has – I know we got to get to a couple of reads. Who's your most improved player from game 1 to game 3? That's a really good question.
Well, while you're thinking about that,
let's think about that. Everybody respond to that while we do a read for our sponsor.
Bobby, tell everybody out there about Babbel.
Habla Espanol. Time to talk about Babbel, the extremely popular language learning app. 1 in 5 Americans have learned a new language on their bucket list. If that's you, make 2024 the year you finally check it off the list with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024. The science-backed language learning app Babbel that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by more than 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. More than 16 million people have used Babbel. All you have to do is download it on your phone and get started. I've been using Babbel for going on about 3 months now, and there's no doubt I'm getting better with my Spanish. Here's a special limited time deal for listeners of On Texas Football. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/on Texas. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/on Texas. Spelled BABBEL.com/on Texas. All one word on Texas, by the way. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate that. And we're going to take this one here from Rhett. Rhett asks, does hit rate on recruits have more to do with development or evaluation?
So it's for me in my years doing this, we actually took a look back at when I was at ESPN with the Under Armour game. And we did about an 7 or 8 year look back at that. I can't remember which one. But development, obviously. But so much of this, and I'm a broken record with this, so much of this is kids maximizing their talent. Now, some of that's injury. Kids could have bad luck with injuries, right? Or you could have a major injury. But it's also the off the field. That's part of maximizing your talent. Then before you ever get to the on the field development and maximizing your talent, the strength and conditioning. And I think the most talented players are pretty obvious out there. The guys with the highest upside, the highest ceilings, what have you. That's pretty obvious. That we aren't like doing anything special out here in our jobs. But it's, do those guys maximize their talent? Do they get lucky with the injury bug versus some other guys who careers are derailed by 3-4 injuries before they're 21 years old? But then it's the off the field, how that lines up with maximizing yourself on the field. Now, kind of when we did a look back at that, it was pretty glaring for the guys that didn't make it. I'll say that at that talent level. Now, I've said this before. What's fun, I think so much fun about the rankings part and the upside and looking at that of the prospects is the difference between a guy ranked 60 in the country and 150 in the country at the same position is very minute. So a lot of times it really does come down to which guy maximizes their talent versus which guy doesn't. If you just go back and look at that stuff. And again, that can be anything. Now, from the guys ranked 60 to 300 to 400 in the country, there's a bigger difference in the upside ability there. But it's not a lot. When you start getting into these top 300 rankings in the country and you go position by position, there's not a lot of difference between these guys. I mean, when you get down to it, it may be one guy's a 4.5 guy versus a 4.6. It may be testing as a whole. It may be production. It may be this kid was injured a little bit in high school. This kid wasn't. But there's not much difference. And that's why one of the things I harp on with this, to get very long-winded, is the more games Texas wins, the more players they get on campus for either further evaluation. That's why Nick had the best roster year in, year out, because he could get every kid on campus he wanted to. And yep, they know the huddle. Yep, the assistant coaches go out and watch them and talk to the trainers and high school coaches and get all the information they need. But then they bring those guys in and do the mental eval with it. And think about how many 5-star guys Nick Saban turned down over the years that he did not like the mental eval. That's the great thing about winning a lot of football games. I mean, Zealous Hicks was on campus 3 times in 5 months. So Texas has a strong evaluation of him in the 26 class.
I had this to say about maximization. It's similar to what Tony Hills just said earlier in this show. Said, look, Colin Simmons has as much talent or more than Brian Arakpo and Sergio Kendall. He goes, but, he's a freshman. He's got to get there, right? And so there are elite players that still have to work hard. It's just not given to them. Yes, they have a lot of God-given ability, but part of your God-given ability, in my opinion, over time, is whether or not you're a hard worker and whether or not you're willing to sacrifice. That actually, there's some, I know that people said, oh, well, that can be taught.
No.
It's hard. It's hard. You either have that willingness or you don't sometimes. I will also add this. There are levels to this, to Jerry's point. Okay. You can take a guy like Gunnar Helm, not highly recruited, right? Developing and maximizing come into play, right? Where he clearly needed to gain weight and just get older, right? And grow. There are different elements at different parts of the game. But one last point, Jerry is talking about number 60 in the country isn't that far off for number 150. What's the difference really between a late 2nd round pick and a 4th round or 5th round pick? Comes out in the wash. I mean, that it's not that big a difference. And that's what you're really talking about.
All right, guys. Our last two, because excuse me, another one just came in. This one from Trace Little. I have been a Horns fan for my whole life. I've watched Vince Young win the big one from Afghanistan, so I've been bought in good times and bad. The player development is crazy right now. Maximization.
I agree. And, Gunnar Helm is one of those guys. For me, Tavondre Sweat was a big one for me last year. I'll tell you another one that Tony Hills talked about was Jake Majors. Now, Jake Majors was a 4-star prospect. We had him in the ESPN Under Armour game when I was there, but he had never played center. That's a totally different deal than being ranked as a guard, right? Same thing. Daniel Cruz got a little time at center last year. He's getting a crash course on center during his redshirt year. But so many guys don't play center that end up being centers. So there's that maximization part. So you got to give Kyle Flood a lot of credit there, along with Torrey Beckton. But that's player development too. At center, when you haven't played that position, you're just projected to play it. But there's so many guys, we can point to there. I mean, look, Jahdae Barron came in with a lot of talent, but I guarantee he's going to leave Texas saying, you know what, I wouldn't have been able to play 2-3 different positions if they didn't develop me really well at Texas. He's another player development guy for me because he's starting at 2 positions, 2 separate years. You can only do that if you're being developed as a player.
I would add one more thing to that, Jerry, and I don't want to belabor it, but it's also getting the right guys that want to be developed.
That's it.
I mentioned that earlier, and that's what I was trying to really get at. Gunnar Helm wanted to be developed. He had talent, but he wanted, and so part of that is picking the early guys, to your point about Saban having all his guys come in for camps, and then taking those guys and then creating the culture, the strength and conditioning program, and all the accoutrements to create this stew, for lack of a better term, that allows these things to happen. Texas is not the only place where this is happening in the world.
Right.
But I will say this, Tavondre Sweat was one of those guys that I feel like Texas lifted up. Whereas I think Gunnar Helm has as much responsibility as anybody for it right now. And so it's interesting because you come along all levels or all ends of the spectrum, right, of players. Not as talented, but really hard worker and wants to be good versus a Colin Simmons who, from what and Ryan Wingo, who are uber talented and want to be good and are willing to work to do it. I mean, it comes across all spectrums, and the end result can still be a 90 graded player or a 95 graded player or a 100 graded player, however you want to do it. Sark, I knew Sark was different when we saw Christian Jones get drafted. Christian Jones wanted to be great from the get-go, too. He took his body very, very seriously very early, in my opinion.
The most difficult thing for Sark and the staff or any college staff when they start running at a very high level is collecting talent versus assembling a team. And those who stick with how they assemble the team have long-term success. Those that ascend and then just start collecting talent tend to have the ups and downs. Something to keep in mind there when I think watching all of college football. And what different topic, Hurley just did that in the offseason at UConn basketball. And I'm not saying he's going to win 3 in a row because nobody does, but he didn't just go collect talent. He reassembled his team because he could have got anybody he wanted there. And he didn't. He got the guys he wanted there.
All right. One last super chat to close out the day, fellas. Jerry's Jack Link says, and thank you, Jerry's. If the draft was today, do you think a team would take Arch in the first round? How many NFL GMs would not be willing to take a Manning?
This is a great question, actually.
It is.
I mean, I think you'd have to. I don't know how high, but are you going to be at the NFL GM that passed on Arch Manning?
Nah.
I mean, I don't know how high, how low, etc. But I wouldn't want that on my resume. The Chiefs can pass on Arch Manning, but how would you like? If you're a Dallas Cowboy, the Texans can pass on Arch Manning with Stroud, in my opinion, right? But how would you like to be Jerry Jones and sitting there with Arch Manning potentially on the board for you? Holy cow! You'd have to take him.
Yeah, even though he's going to sit. Even though he sits a couple of years, yes, 100%.
Yes,
1,000,000%.
Yeah, I mean that you want to talk about two supernovas colliding, the Manning brand and Dallas Cowboys after going to the University of Texas.
Yeah.
I probably got some Dallas Cowboy fans really excited, by the way. Just
well, luckily for Texas fans, there's 2025 and 2026, and I'm not even ruling out 2027. I know a lot of people are, but the Manning family's different.
Oh, what a fun question for sure. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. We want to thank them, along with Gooder, BetterHelp, and Babbel, all for sponsoring today's show. Bobby, what's coming on later?
We got State of the Program. Jerry, myself, and CJ going to talk a little bit about what happened or what's gone on last week or so, but also look forward to what we expect to happen this coming week. Everything from team news, Quinn Ewers injury update, as well as Jaden Blue, etc. Also, a little recruiting news and notes. Then we also have a couple other things coming on. Make sure you check out ontexasfootball.com this week, guys. That's ontexasfootball.com. We have a special that is still ongoing. Become an OTF OG. Join our community. Guys, we've got a lot of people on there talking Texas football all day long. It's just for you guys. OTF OG, 1-year subscription, $39.95 if you use that code OTF OG. Hope you guys join us, please.
Okay, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified anytime that we go live or post any videos. And we will be back same time, same place tomorrow morning. So for Bobby Burt and Jerry Hamilton,